everyone, and thank you for joining. My name is Marquita Bass, and I am an advisor for My Style Matters, which is a nonprofit started by Tia, a breast cancer nonprofit. And today we're going to talk about clinical trials. I have to admit, I was skeptical about clinical trials. I was very skeptical until I was educated. And I think it's important to have this conversation because women are living longer because of clinical trials. And I think it's very important for us to have this conversation. So I have the honor of interviewing Ricky Fairley. And she's going to talk about clinical trials. But first, I want Ricky to give us a brief overview of her breast cancer journey and why she does what she's doing, and then to start talking about clinical trials and the importance of clinical trials. So before Ricky starts, I want to say one other thing. There are two women here who are long-term triple-negative breast cancer survivors, and that's a huge deal. So I want to encourage other women to let you know that you will and you can survive triple-negative breast cancer. So Ricky, go ahead and start, please.
Sure. So thanks for having me. Thanks for letting me talk about my purpose and my passion so much, Marquita. And gosh, I'm not even sure how we met. From your book, remember?
Yeah, but I didn't know you. I wrote about you, Ricky. And when I met you, I didn't know you were the lady I had written about in the book.
That's so funny. That's so funny. That's great. So I'm on 10 years survivor. I was diagnosed with stage 3A, triple negative, and I did a double mastectomy. I did 6 rounds of chemo, TAC, standard of care chemo. I did 6 weeks of radiation. A year to the date of my diagnosis, almost exactly a year, my cancer came back on my chest wall. They found 5 spots on my chest wall. My doctor at the time said, okay, Ricky, you're now metastatic. You have 2 years to live. Get your affairs in order. And I said, well, I really can't die right now. I have a daughter at Dartmouth, and I was the breadwinner for my family. I had to pay for college. So I said, me and God need to work this out. What are we going to do? And, back then, when you went to Dr. Google, there were 3 things. You're going to die, and the Triple Negative Breast Cancer Foundation. So I reached out to them. I reached out to Haley Dinnerman, and she recommended a doctor in Atlanta where I lived at the time. Her name was Ruth O'Regan. She was at Emory, and she was probably one of about 5 or 6 doctors actually doing research in the triple negative space. My oncologist had only had 2 cases of triple negative, and both of the women died in 9 months. She didn't really know what she was doing either. So I said, we need some help. So she actually went with me to Ruth O'Regan, and she put me on what was then experimental drugs, two experimental drugs. They were experimental for TNBC. They hadn't been approved for TNBC yet, carboplatin, gemcitabine. They are now standard of care for TNBC, but at the time they were not. And so let's try it. And I'm still here.
That is awesome. I was also treated at Emory.
Oh, really? Okay. Awesome.
Yes, I was. Yeah. So, and I'm also 10 years out. That's amazing. That's
right. Yeah, 2011. So I'm very blessed to be here, but I know that God left me here to do this work, and I've been an advocate ever since. And I know we have to fix it. And over the years, I've done advocacy work. I serve on the board of the TNBC Foundation. I've done advocacy for a bunch of pharma companies, for Sisters Network, and for Tiger Lily a little bit. And but when I started looking at the numbers, and I'm a marketing person, that's how I think. And when I started looking at the numbers, like from a marketing perspective, or like sort of putting together a business analysis of it, I pulled all the stats together for what was going on with Black women. And I went to SABCS, which is the San Antonio Breast Cancer Conference. It's like the biggest one in the world, to, pre-COVID. And I kind of presenting this data and this notion of Black breast cancer to pharma companies. And even the pharma companies were blown away by the fact that when you look at all the data together, it paints a horrible picture. They were very familiar with the 41% higher mortality rate, but that's just one of the stats. All right, that's one, and that's a horrible one. So if you think about it, that one says for every 100 white women who die, 141 Black women die. That's horrific.
Wow.
But I mean, worse than that we have a 39% higher recurrence rate than white women. Black women under 35 get breast cancer at twice the rate of white women, die at 3 times the rate of white women. Black women like us who are survivors, we have a 71% higher relative risk of death than white women. And the numbers are horrible. Black women under 50 are twice as likely to die of triple negative. So, yeah, and we get triple negative breast cancer at 3 times the rate of white women. And for people who don't know what triple negative breast cancer is, basically there are 3 main kinds of breast cancer. One is kind of fed by estrogen, one by progesterone, and one by an enzyme called HER2. And it's basically the portal into which medicine can be given into the cells, into the cancer cells. When you test negative to all 3 of those, it's called triple negative, and we can't get treatment basically. And now within the last really year and a half, we now have the first targeted drugs for triple negative. One is for early stage and metastatic, that's Keytruda, and one is Trodelvy, which is for metastatic. But until the last year and a half, we didn't even have a drug. And I think also the most disturbing thing about triple negative, it has the highest mortality rate. It's the most aggressive. Black women are getting it with ridiculous numbers. We're getting it younger, larger tumors. And it's the only breast cancer subtype that doesn't have a drug to prevent recurrence. So you've heard of somebody taking something for 5 years, tamoxifen. We don't have a drug. So my drug is paddleboarding and God. I mean, we don't have a drug. So we have so much research that needs to be done to advance the science. And so when I started looking at the data and painting this picture, I'm like, well, why is it happening? Like, why are we different? What's wrong with our disease? Why are Black women dying so readily? And if you look back into history, when most of the drugs that are standard of care were made, guess what? There were no Black women in the clinical trials. So if you think about the drugs that we all took, the Red Devil, which you've heard of, adriamycin and Taxotere and Cytoxan, and all of these drugs, even Herceptin, there were no Black women in the clinical trials. So the drugs aren't working for us. I mean, we're blessed because they work for us. But I mean, frankly, the standard of care, TAC, didn't work for me. I had to go back and take more drugs, right? Which are now protocol or standard of care. So I'm sorry for her no barking. So, we need research, we need data, we need drugs. Like, I want the drug that has on the bottle, this drug is made for Black women, because Black breast cancer is a different disease. We have a different disease. And now there's a whole new body of research that's been happening in the last couple of years that is validating that a Black breast cancer cell looks different from a white breast cancer cell on a molecular basis, that a Black triple negative breast cancer cell looks different than a white triple negative breast cancer cell. And that data that research is happening all around us, and we need more of it. And until we advance the science and get the drugs made that we need for our bodies, we're going to keep dying in these ridiculous numbers. It's just uncalled for. And so what can we do about that? We can get into clinical trials. We have to get into clinical trials. So last year, I was blessed to get a grant from Genentech to understand why it's not happening. And clearly we know about Henrietta Lacks and the syphilis study and all the bad earned medical mistrust. It's there. We feel it. We talk about it. We hear it. More from older women than younger women, but it's still out there. But we have to get over that. And we have to understand that laws have been put in place to protect us from that kind of stuff happening. So we did this research study, and I wanted to dig into what are the emotional barriers to clinical trial participation? What's driving the fear in our Black women? Let's take kind of the social determinants of health off the table, because that's what white people want to blame it on. Oh, she's a single mom. She's not going to show up. She's got 3 kids. She's got to work. She doesn't have transportation to get to the trial, and all those things, access to healthcare, all those things are there, but you can throw money at all of those things. You can fix that. What we couldn't fix is the fear, right? What is driving the fear? And what I learned in my research, and we interviewed 48 Black breasties and some family members qualitatively. So we did a bunch of focus groups and interviews, and then we did a quant study of 263 Black breasties. And we talked to them, and we let the the qualitative research kind of feed into what the questions would be in the quant study. And what we learned was the fear is driven by a lack of knowledge. And you said this earlier, Marquita, we just don't know. We don't know how a trial works. We don't understand the science. We don't know. And that lack of knowledge creates us to say stuff like, oh girl, don't do a clinical trial. You're going to get the sugar pill and die. Or it's a last resort. Or, you know, you're going to be a science project. You want to be an experiment. You're going to be a guinea pig. But all of that, those misconceptions are based on a fear of not really understanding how it works. And think about it. Any situation you go into, if you're afraid, you're going to have to feel some way about it. If you're fearful, because you don't know, you don't understand it. You don't know, like even think about buying a new car. You don't know what those car dealers are telling you. So you're fearful of that situation. Or think about when anytime you've ever been afraid of something, it was probably because you didn't understand it. So same thing here. And so we learned in our research that I could really convince a breastie to participate in a trial. I could get her to go from a 1, I'll never do one because I don't want to be the guinea pig, till 5, sign me up, in 5 minutes.
Right.
May
I ask a quick question? I'm sorry for interrupting you, but this is just in my mind. Ricky, do you think Black women have been offered the opportunity to participate?
Yeah, okay, so that's definitely a factor, Marquita, that's a factor. No, we have not. I think the data shows that it's only about 20% of the time that a doctor invites a Black woman to a trial, a Black breastie. The other part of it is that when the breastie or a family member bring up a trial to a doctor, they still walk away from the conversation not feeling equipped to answer the questions and make a decision. So the doctor's still not spending enough time with them, but you're right. And so part of the whole conversation is advocating for ourselves and asking for the trials, because no, we are not being asked for the trials, right? We're not asked to participate. And then even when we talk about it, we still are like fuzzy about, okay, well, what does that really mean? Like, what did you say? Like, and how do I understand that better? Not only so I can make a decision, but also I can go home to my mama and say, hey, mom, I'm going to do a clinical trial, or hey, daughter, or hey, father, whatever. And they say, hold on, wait a minute. And they have the same misconceptions. You can't do a clinical trial. You're going to be the guinea pig, or you're going to get the sugar pill. But by clearly explaining how a trial works, that you're going to get standard of care, you're going to get a drug that's already proven, it's on the market, we know what it can do, and you're going to get that, and possibly a new drug on top of that, or in addition to that, or in place of that, that could do better for you. The data shows that people who are in trials have better outcomes. The data shows that you get better care because you have more people on a team working on you, and there's more supervision, more scans, more people worrying about every piece of everything you eat, everything that you do. And so you're very closely watched, you get better care. And it's free. It's free care. It's free. So if you have insurance issues, or if you even when we have insurance, there's still some gaps in what we have to pay for. This is free treatment. And if it's not free, don't do that trial. Okay, if somebody says a trial that's not free, it's not the right trial. It's not a trial.
So I'm glad you mentioned cost, because I was under the impression that you have to have insurance to participate in clinical trials. So you're saying that's not the case?
No, that's not the case. That is not the case. That is not the case at all. And so the real trials that are really happening and funded properly take care of the patient's costs, right?
Okay.
And also pay for stuff like transportation, or like childcare, or food while you're at the cancer center, or parking, or all these other ancillary expenses should also be covered by the trial. Okay. So basically we kind of tested a bunch of different platforms to help people understand it better. So just explaining what a trial is in very simple terms, explaining what standard of care is, and then saying, that Advil you took last week, who's in a clinical trial? Mm-hmm. That Tylenol you gave your baby, who's in a clinical trial? That antibiotic you gave your dog, who's in a clinical trial, right? So all of these things, and I think that the response in the focus groups was like, really? I can't believe that is the case. So pretty much any drug on the market was in a clinical trial. So it's no different. And you think about also, every day you get up, you go get in your car, you push the gas pedal, and you hope it's going to work. I think that's based on not science. It's based on science. Science is all around us. This Zoom that we're on right now, it was based on science. So science happens in our world every day, and it's happening in research, and we have to participate. But the most compelling argument that we can give people that we learned in our research was, do it for your daughter. Do it for your daughter. So, we are, Black women are badasses. We are just badasses. We wear the purple cape. We wear the gold crown. We take care of everybody at the expense of ourselves, which I know is how I got cancer, from stress. But, I'll give you my last piece of chicken. I will end starve. I will give, buy you a car and walk, but that's who we are. So do it for your daughter. If you're not going to do it for yourself, do it for somebody you love, your daughter, your son, your sister, your mama, your auntie, and give it, not only heal yourself, but try to pay it forward and heal somebody else. But
well, I've learned something. I'm sorry, Ricky, here. I didn't know until now that you took drugs that was still in, the clinical trial phase. And that's why you're here today. So you are the number one. I mean, you are an example.
I'm an example.
I didn't know that until now. That is amazing.
And the drugs weren't in the clinical trial, but they were experimental.
So what's the difference?
So basically, they had not been proven for TNBC. So basically, when a drug is approved by the FDA, it's for a specific indication. So for example, Keytruda, which is being a miracle drug. Oh my God, if you're newly diagnosed with triple negative breast cancer, you want to take Keytruda. It's a miracle drug. So Keytruda was actually developed for lung cancer 8 years ago. And so it's just in the recent year, really just not even a year ago, it's been approved to be effective for triple negative breast cancer. So even though carboplatin and gemcitabine were on the market for other things, they had not been proven for triple negative breast cancer. So that's
they were repurposed.
Yeah, they were repurposed. Exactly. They just used them for triple negative to see what happened, and it worked. So I'm here. And so, but I mean, if you think about it, I was recently talking to one of our good friends from BlackDoctor.org, Dr. Gigi, and she's at Georgetown, and she was talking about how she's a survivor and a doctor, but she was talking about how she really grew up in the AIDS epidemic. And so she was an AIDS doctor early on in the 80s. And frankly, there was nothing for AIDS. There were no drugs. So everything that people took were clinical trials. So when they tested all the AIDS drugs that are now like saving lives and making it a chronic disease, they were all clinical trials at the time. But think about how many lives they were saving with clinical trials because they had no data. And, and COVID has added a whole nother complexity to this whole clinical trial conversation. But frankly, there were no drugs for COVID. There wasn't a vaccine. Had been a lot of research done in the vaccine area. So they were able to take that body of science and apply it to COVID to give us a vaccine in less than a year. So that's all science. And, we're now talking about, I guess the number's up to 1 million people have died of COVID. How many would have died without the vaccine? And a lot of people who are currently still dying and getting, my kids have COVID right now. God bless them. Their house is quarantined, but my grandkids have it. And, but the people that are dying from COVID right now are dying because they didn't take the vaccine. You know what I mean? Because now you can, the vaccine doesn't prevent COVID, but it prevents you from dying or going to the hospital or a hospital stay, right? So, but all of this science, it's happening every day. And think about it. Every day, a lot of women die of breast cancer. Every day, a lot of women get diagnosed with breast cancer. Every day, a lot of Black women get triple negative breast cancer and die of it. And so every day we have to focus on this science. We have to give more people a chance. And the only way we're going to do it is to get more drugs. And the only way we're going to get more drugs is to have those drugs tested on our Black bodies.
I have another question for you. Another challenge that may be why a lot of African-American women don't participate. I've read a lot of the requirements to get into those trials. And oftentimes you can't have what they call comorbidities or whatever. And unfortunately, we have those metabolic diseases, the hypertension, the obesity.
Diabetes.
So how do we get around that, Ricky?
So guess what? Because of our sort of comorbidity situation, which is also what affects a lot of people with COVID, the trials need to be designed for our bodies. That's why we need more trials for Black women, right?
Okay.
We need to have drugs. Guess what? So guess what? When you're going to get breast cancer and you have diabetes, you can't get a drug. Like, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Right. So I mean, so excluding us those diseases that Black women get, that Black people get, has to be part of the science.
Okay.
You can't. What good is a breast cancer drug going to be if it can't work if you have diabetes? Hello. So that's part of the science. That's why a lot of the trials that are happening right now are not going to help us anyway, because they're being designed for bodies that aren't like our bodies.
So how do we correct that? What's the solution to that?
Well, all right. So, we built our whenwetrial.org website to kind of educate and advocate and help people learn how to ask your doctor for trials. But you know what? I'm beating the drum every day with every pharma company that makes a breast cancer drug. And we have to keep doing advocacy work, like the work that Tia does and the work that we're doing and the work that, Tiger Lily does. We're all working really hard with our pharma partners to encourage them. And, they see the void. They really do. And they see the opportunity. Like, we're working with one of our partners right now to provide a nurse navigator system for their trial. And so we basically are bringing navigators to their trial. They have a trial that they're launching. We're helping them recruit. We're working on all the materials they're using to recruit with. And then we're providing a nurse navigator to walk their patients through a trial. So it becomes a non-biased job. The navigator doesn't work for the company, the drug company. They don't work for the doctor's office or even the trial administrator. They work for us. She's a Black breasty nurse navigator. And she basically is guiding you through on how to select the trial, how to read the informed consent, which can be very, very overwhelming. This 30-page document that has all the ways it's like those commercials, the drug commercials where, 60% of the copy or 80% of the copy is, how you're going to die, right? It's going through all that stuff, but helping you understand it, walking you through, talking you through the side effects and how to manage the side effects. So we're now providing that service to drug companies to help us to help them get more Black women into clinical trials. But we all just have to beat the drum and keep talking about it. I mean, we keep using the word, and now is the time, because for whatever reason, thank you, George Floyd, all the bad stuff that's happened over the COVID, thank you, COVID, that now health disparities, is a word, is a thing. We've known about for our whole lives, but now it's a thing. So I want to milk this thing for as long as we can and bring attention to Black disease and why we're different and why we deserve better treatment. And, people keep talking about health equity. That is not a thing. What the hell is health equity? It's not health equity. It's health inequity. There is no
equity.
There is no health equity. So call it like it is. So I'm trying to change the vocabulary and how we talk about all this stuff, right? So to me, health equity means when the health provider, doctor, nurse, whoever, whatever, researcher, whatever, practices the golden rule that you learned from your mother, that you learned at church. Treat others as you want to be treated. So until the HCPs treat their patients with the care, the compassion, the excellence, the knowledge, and the science that they would expect for themselves or their family members, we won't have health equity. And so that's sort of our next project. When we try going, we're going to start digging into the HCP thing, but that has to happen. And I've also told most of the pharma companies that we talk to for breast cancer that I hate the word underserved. Oh, the underserved population. I hate that word. What does that mean? That says you have a dinner party for 10 people and you invite 10 people to your table, but you only buy enough chicken for 4 of them. So what happens to the other 6 people? They don't get to eat. And that makes the assumption that you're invited to the table, and you're not. Right. They're not. We're not invited to the table, right? And that you're just missing the chicken. You're not. That you have a fork and you don't. To me, the word is unsupported. It also underserved also sort of implies that it's kind of your fault because you didn't show up to the dinner party when there was no chicken. Like, it's crazy. I hate that word. So I call it unsupported. unsupported. We don't have support. We don't have access to care. All the things that kind of everybody wants to sort of blame the social determinants of health on, it's because we're not supported. Because we're not supported, we're not getting, we're not getting what we need in terms of care that we deserve. But it's got to start with digging into the science and getting the drugs that we have. So, I mean, I know a lot of rich Black women who got breast cancer and died. And it wasn't about their insurance. It wasn't about money. It was about the science did not work for them.
That's a very good point. Will you talk a little about whenwetrial.org? I've heard you talk about it before because I just think it's a great tool. But just talk about that tool, please.
So we took all of the stuff that we learned in the research. We took everything that we heard and we stewed over it and put it in a big pot. And we said, okay, here's what people are saying. And I approach like I approach marketing problems. Here's what people are saying. Here's what's in their head. So how can we change the game on what they're saying by giving them information that will address their issues? And so that's where we tested these 5 concepts, like do it for your daughter and like, the Advil scenario. And so we took all of the stuff and we built it into When We Trial, and every word, every picture, every video, we really spent a lot of time trying to make it so Black women can understand the science. So hopefully it explains very effectively what standard of care is, what to ask your doctor for, how to stand up for yourself and demand a trial. And so how to get educated about a trial, but also how to ask for one and demand that care for yourself. And so that's our purpose in When We Trial, and it's still a work in progress. We shot a bunch of videos 2 weeks ago. And so I really want to illustrate every FAQ with a video of a Black woman. I don't want people to have to go to a screen and read words on a page. I want them to see themselves, see somebody who looks like us in the pictures, in the words, in the video, so they can say, okay, I get it now because she said it, because a breastie said it. The other key thing that we learned from the research is that guess who has the voice of trust in this whole scenario? Not the doctor, not the nurse, not the researcher, the breastie. So, and so that's why it's so important that we make sure our breasties have the right information, because our research told us that they don't, that because they're scared and they don't know. But once you educate them, so our first outreach when we started When We Trial, we did a huge digital marketing campaign, and we went to all the places online where you could find a Black breastie. We had our ad agency kind of target the advertising and target the messaging so that we could educate our breasties. And now we're on radio. We have a radio by talking to young Black women, because I believe young Black women, Black families don't talk about health until Uncle Pookie has his leg amputated or Aunt Grace got the C word, right? So I believe our young Black women are going to be the voice into our families. So, we have an HBCU internship program. We're working with these lovely, lovely people to educate their families, and the media now that we're hitting is for young Black women, so they can take the information home to their mama. Hey, mama, what's our hair story? Mommy, grandma, did you get your mammogram? Who had cancer in our family? And open the doors to these conversations that, the secrets that are killing us. We have.
I think that's awesome. And another component I think would be really helpful, and Tia is doing some of this with her organization, is encouraging women, Ricky, to manage their risk factors.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the food that we eat, the lack of exercise.
Yeah.
There's no one factor, but I think we need to manage our risk factors.
Yeah.
And
you can't prevent breast cancer. You can early detect it, but you can just take care of yourself, I love the fried chicken and mac and cheese too, but you can't eat it every day. You can't go to Popeyes every day, you have to sort of figure out, we need to make ourselves healthier, and we need to make our families healthier. The one thing I do, I started doing this a few years ago, and my family hated it. I'm the cook on Thanksgiving, since my mom hasn't been cooking too much. And so we all get in a circle before the food to say grace, and everybody says what they're thankful for. But I started making everybody say, okay, what's your A1C? What's your blood pressure? What's your PSA? When was last mammogram? And I started making them give like a health report, and they hated it. They wanted to eat the turkey. I'm like, you want to eat this turkey and these mashed potatoes and this sweet potato pie? You got to tell me your number. And so I forced the conversation in my family. And now, okay, you know, shit, it's my PSA is 5 or 3 or whatever, you know, because they tell me, because I interrogate them. But I feel like everybody needs to have someone in the family that's like the health reporter for the family. And now, if you go to hhs.gov, you know, the government health site, hhs.gov, they actually have a health family tree that you can fill in. And you can fill in who had what. So what's your grandmother died of? Who has high blood pressure? You can fill it into the boxes of your family tree and paint a picture of what could possibly be happening to your family and what's your future like.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
So I have one last question for you, Ricky.
Okay. I know I've been talking a lot too. I'm sorry.
No. Everything you're saying, this is awesome stuff. I mean, this is good stuff, and it's a conversation. It's stuff, information we need to hear. So you're not talking a lot. You're sharing great information. But I want to know, as an individual, how can I make a difference? You know I'm trying to get the word out, but I'm always incumbent. I make it my goal in life to do what I can as an individual. So how can I make a difference?
You can educate. You can share the information. You can send people to whenwetrial.org.
Okay.
Have them join our movement. They can join our e-blast list and watch our show. Like, we educate every Wednesday. You know, every Wednesday, Dr. Mo and I are on The Doctor Is In, and we talk about anything and everything. This week we have 3 like amazing Black researchers, young Black women who have chosen clinical research as their career path, to talk about what they're doing.
Okay.
We've been focused on clinical research, but and direct people to our show, direct people to Tia's work. I mean, the way that we can get funding to do the work that we do is to show our pharma partners that our work is making an impact. And that's by, you know, going to our website, going to our social media, helping us build those numbers so that we can go back and ask for more money to do more work, right? But I think so, just giving exposure, but also just sharing the story. Like, when you go to the doctor for your checkup, talk about clinical trials. Talk about the state of Black breast cancer. And when, you know, new patients call us every day, it's like just so disheartening to get these calls, but we get them every day. And I don't want to scare people when they get diagnosed, because it's already scary enough, right? Right. I want you to know what you're up against. And so it's not only the risk before you get it that you could maybe but at least take care of yourself better, but the risk of Black breast cancer. So when you start to make that decision about, do I get a mastectomy or do I get a lumpectomy? Do I take this chemo or that chemo? Do I take chemo or do a clinical trial? That you know that, guess what? You have a 41% higher rate of death. You have a 71% higher risk of death. You have a 39% recurrence rate. So there's a body of research now that basically says there's 2 things that are happening. One of them is doctors have stopped recommending the self-exam, which is crazy, because they said people are reporting too many false things. Do the self-exam, know your body, know your breast, stand in the mirror, feel them, touch them, know what they feel like, so that if anything happens, you can be ready and stand up for yourself. Don't get dismissed by a doctor, especially young women like Tia, when she got to that diagnosis. Go to the doctor and say, no, this was not here a month ago. I need care, I need treatment. If that doesn't listen to you, go to another doctor. But also know that you can, you have to like fight for yourself in a lot of circumstances, and just don't give in, but know that what you're up against. So know that the research that was that determined whether a lumpectomy, I guess now there's like lumpectomy versus radiation is equivalent to a mastectomy. That's what they're saying now. That's the standard of care, to do a lumpectomy and radiation. Well, guess what? You know where that research was conducted? In Sweden.
Oh, and I've always wondered about that research.
In Sweden. Check it out. We'll look it up. In Sweden. Are there any Black women in Sweden? There are Black women. So when you start talking about the surgery you're going to get, dig deeper and call me. I will help you have these conversations. But the lumpectomy thing, I mean, how many women have you talked to in the last month that their breast cancer came back?
It's too common. It's all too common.
Don't get me started on that. And why did it come back? You know what I mean? Because they didn't take all the precautions they could, because they didn't know, because they weren't educated, because they didn't have the information they needed up front. And that's what I want to do. I want to make sure we're arming them. So I don't want to scare you, but I want you to know that your body is different. Your breast cancer is different. It is not the white breast cancer. And when when you're talking to your oncologist or any of your docs, ask them, you know what, well, have you given this to a Black woman? How did this work with a Black?
I love it.
I actually got kicked out of an office a couple of months ago. I went with one of our buddies to a white surgeon in DC, and I started asking the questions, and she had stage 0. So the doctor was like, we're over treating her. I said, you know what, for Black women, there is no over treatment. I don't care that, you think that your thing is going to work, but show me the data that says that this worked for a Black body. And then we can talk. But they don't have it. They don't know it. And so until we get it, and that's why we have to get it. We have to do this work. Like we got, Biden elected as Black women. We got a lot of people elected as Black women. We do a lot of things that were really powerful. So do this for yourself. Do this for our community. Do this for your sister and your mama and your auntie and your grandma and your babies. I work for my babies. I work for my grandbabies, and I don't want them to have to deal with this. So.
Great. And in closing, Ricky, how do people connect with you? If someone wanted to connect with you, how does that happen?
Ricky at touchbbca.org. I'll put it in my name if that helps.
Okay, awesome.
I'll put it in my name, and then email me, tweet me, text me, whatever. I'm always here. I always answer the touch phone, and we're happy to help you. We're happy to help you find doctors, find resources. We have a really great medical advisory board, and I will text them at 4 a.m, and they'll get back to me at 5 and with answers. And so if I don't know the answer, I'll definitely be able to try to find it for you, and our doctors will find it for you because they're all awesome. We have some great Black women doctors on our board.
And anyone who's listening to this is a great resource, and you should take advantage of it, because just from my experience, I learned the more you know, the better decisions you can make.
Yeah.
And just take advantage of, contacting Ricky if you have questions, if you're recently diagnosed, because she just has, as you can see, a lot of information, and just take advantage of it. And we don't have any questions for you in the chat, Ricky. I just want to say this has been awesome. And thank you for all that you do. I truly appreciate everything that you do. And thank you for taking the time to have this conversation and to share this information. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. And look at our stuff, like join our mailing list, because we're going to do a road show. We're on the road starting Saturday. We're going to do Charleston, Martha's Vineyard, DC, Essence Fest. We're hitting the road with our message, and we're going to be out there in the world, trying to get where Black women live, work, play, and pray.
Awesome.
If you join our mailing list, you'll get all the notifications about where we're going to be with our truck. Sometimes we're going to have a mammo truck there. Sometimes we're going to have singers there. We're going to have make it a party, but we're just going to try to get into the world. So. Okay.
Because I get your email. So for anyone who's not currently getting the information, if you go to touchbbca.org to sign up, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Awesome.
Well, thank you, Marquita. Thank you, Tia. Love you, Tia.